My name is Jacob, and I grew up in a small town in Ohio where everyone knew each other, but no one knew the truth. Our house was like the stage of a cheap theater. Outside there was a neat facade. Inside there were debts, screams, and my mother's play called We Are the Perfect Family. Mom was the star of this show, loud, domineering, with a smile that she turned on like a lamp when someone was watching. For her, someone else's opinion was more important than my brother, Carter, and me. We were props in her drama, a strong single mother. And I realized early on that there was no room for weakness in this performance. Dad ran away when I was 10, unable to stand her control. He left us with her, and I still don't know whether to envy him or hate him. At 19, I broke out college, work, poverty, but pride. And then something began that still makes my fists clench. My mother's fake tax collection on my illness, which showed that her script was not just a lie, it was a crime. Mom always knew how to play to the audience. In church, she sobbed, telling how hard it is to raise 2 boys alone. The neighbors brought pies, and she thanked them with such sincerity that even I sometimes believed. But it was different at home. Jacob, don't embarrass me, she hissed if I brought a 3 instead of a 5. Carter, don't you dare whine, you're not a girl, she would say when my younger brother was crying over a broken knee. Her love was like a decoration, beautiful to look at, but empty inside. I remember smashing a vase when I was 7 years old, trying to get candy. She screamed for an hour, not because the vase was expensive, but because what will people think if they find out how clumsy you are? People, they were her god, and we were the victims on the altar of their opinion. Dad was different, quiet, with tired eyes. He tried to argue with her, but each time he gave up. She wants the best, he would say when I asked why Mom was like this. But her best was like a cage. When he turned 40, he just left. Without a note, without a call. I found his jacket in the closet a week later, and it was all that was left of him. Mom told the neighbors that he left us for someone else. But I knew he ran away because he was suffocating. Sometimes I imagined him living somewhere, drinking coffee, and not being afraid of her voice. But more often than not, I was angry. He left Carter and me at her theater, where we played the roles of grateful sons. Friends, what do you think about Mom's obsession with other people's opinions? Is it concern or selfishness? Write in the comments. Have you ever encountered this in your family? Subscribe to find out what's next. Carter was 4 years younger, and I tried to be not only a brother to him, but also a shield. He was gentle, he loved to draw, but his mother called it womanizing stuff. Be like Jacob, she said, even though she didn't like me either. I realized early on that her words are not love but control. By the time I was 13, I started working part-time, mowing lawns in the summer, cleaning porches in the winter. He hid the money in an old shoebox, so as not to ask her or listen to her monologues about victims. I'll bend my back for you, she screamed, even though she only worked in a nail salon and spent half on dresses for going out. I didn't say anything because it was useless to argue. Carter once asked, "Why is she always angry?" I replied, "Because she needs a stage, and we're the audience." When I was 19, I went to college, not because I dreamed, but to escape. Scholarship, part-time jobs, cheap dorm room. I was poor, but I was free. Mom called once a month, always with the same message. Don't embarrass the family. Carter needs an example. I was nodding into the phone, but something as hard as a rock was growing inside. I didn't want to be her role model, her prop, her son. I wanted to be myself. Carter stayed with her, and I felt guilty, but I promised myself I'd pick him up as soon as I could. We corresponded. He sent me his drawings, robots, dragons, everything that my mother considered nonsense. I kept them in a folder as proof that it wasn't broken yet. Friends, how do you like Jacob's decision to run away to college? Is this selfishness or salvation? Write in the comments. Have you ever left home to become yourself? Share our story with your friends. Life was getting better. I worked in a cafe, studied, even started dating a girl who laughed at my jokes. Mom rarely appeared in my life, and it was a relief. But I knew that her performance wasn't over. She called to brag. Carter's on the football team now, I've made a man out of him. I knew Carter hated football, but I didn't say anything. She sent photos from church meetings where she stood in the center, beaming. as if the world revolved around her. I liked it so I wouldn't argue. But every call she made was like a reminder. She's still a director, and I'm an actor who ran away but wasn't written out of the script. One day, she called with a tremor in her voice. "Jacob, we need your help. This is serious." I tensed up, thinking that something was wrong with Carter. "What happened?" I asked. She paused, then said, "You're sick." I found out. My stomach clenched. I was healthy, I ran in the mornings, I didn't even catch a cold. "Mom, what are you talking about?" I said, but she was already crying just like in her best scenes. I started collecting, "People will help, you're my son." I opened her social media page and saw a post. "My Jacob is struggling with a serious illness. Help save him." A link to the collection, a picture of me at 16 sad emojis. I sat looking at the screen and felt the world crumble. She wasn't just lying. She used me like she always did, but now it wasn't just a show. It was a robbery. Friends, how do you like Mom's fake collection? Is it desperation or a crime? Write in the comments. Have you ever faced such lies for the sake of money? Support our podcast to find out what's next. I closed the laptop, feeling rage and shame fighting inside. Mom has always been an actress, but now she has crossed the line. I remembered how she made me smile in family photos, how she said, "Everything is for the sake of the family." But it was never for the sake of family. It was for her sake, her image, her power, her stage. I didn't know how far she would go, but I knew one thing. I would not remain her prop. Did she want to play with my illness? I'll play by my own rules. Not for revenge, but for the truth. Because the truth is not her decoration. This is my ticket from her theater. Friends, what do you think about Jacob's decision to fight? Is this a force or a road to conflict? Write in the comments, how would you start looking for the truth? Subscribe so you don't miss the sequel. I thought that my mother's fake tax on my illness was the bottom, but she broke through it with such speed that I barely had time to breathe. It all started with a Facebook post that I happened to see from a friend while scrolling through the feed while we were drinking coffee. My picture is an old one from the hospital bed where I lay with the virus a few years ago, thin with an oxygen mask. The caption was heartbreaking. "Please help Jacob. He's only 24, and he's fighting a rare form of cancer. His mother is alone, needs your help." I almost dropped the phone. It was her, my mom. She launched a GoFundMe, concocting a story about my cancer, with fake reports, the progress of the disease, and tearful thanks for donations. When I called her, she was playing dumb first, then yelling, "It's for the sake of the family." I found out that she raised almost $20,000. Not a cent reached me or Carter. It all went to her new car, salons, and as I later found out, a trip to Miami with her boyfriend. But the real blow came when she started a new collection on Carter's depression. Then I understood. She's not a mother. She's a predator, and my brother and I are her prey. I was sitting at a friend's place, looking at the screen, and I could feel the blood pounding in my temples. Mom wasn't just lying, she was directing a whole series. She posted my old photos where I looked like a ghost after the flu and added details. Jacob is weak and the chemotherapy is exhausting him. There were even scans of medical certificates, fakes that she apparently drew in some kind of editor. People wrote, "Hold on, Jacob." And poor mother, how is she coping? I flipped through the comments, and everyone was like a knife. She raised $20,000 from neighbors, colleagues, even strangers from Ohio who believed her tears. But I was healthy. I ran in the mornings, worked in a cafe, and saved up for my life. She stole not only money, she stole my reputation, my truth, my life. I dialed her number, my fingers trembling. "Mom, what kind of nonsense is on GoFundMe?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She paused, then spoke as if I had offended her. "Jacob, what are you talking about? It's for the family." I raised my voice. "What kind of cancer? I'm healthy." She started shouting, "You haven't lost anything. I am a mother. I have the right. Do you know how hard it is for me?" I listened to her, and my rage grew like wildfire. "Is it hard?" She bought a new SUV, gleaming in the entryway like her fake smile. She went to salons where she was painted and massaged, while I was living on a scholarship and coffee. Later, Carter said that she went to Miami with some guy, her boyfriend, whom she called just a friend. I squeezed the phone so that the screen blinked. It wasn't helping the family. It was a theft disguised as love. Friends, how do you like mom's fake collection? Is this desperation or arrogance? Write in the comments. Have you ever faced such lies for the sake of money? Subscribe to find out what's next. I thought I could swallow it. Close her eyes, as she had done all her life, so as not to ruin her family performance. I even texted her, delete the collection. This is wrong. She replied, don't teach me, Jacob. I know what I'm doing. Her words were like a slap in the face. I remembered how she made me smile in family photos, how she said, everything is for you. But it was never for us. It was for her sake, her image, her power. I could have stopped, but then Carter sent me a screenshot, a new post on her page. My youngest son Carter is struggling with depression. He needs your support. The photo is of Carter sad with downcast eyes, taken when he was just tired after school. She was lying again, now using him. My brother, who painted dragons and dreamed of escaping, became her new bait. I called Carter. Did you know? I asked. His voice was low, almost broken. She said it would help us. But I don't want people to think I'm sick. I felt my heart tighten. Carter was a kid who trusted her like I once did. I remembered how I protected him from her screams, how I hid his drawings so that she wouldn't tear them. Now she was selling his pain, just as she had sold mine. I said, don't worry, I'll figure it out. But inside I knew, this is not a trial. This is a war. Not for revenge, but for him. For us. Because she won't stop until she's sucked everything out of us. Friends, what do you think about the new Carter fee? Is this too much, or can it still be forgiven? Write in the comments. How would you protect your brother in such a situation? Share our story with your friends. I started digging. I asked a computer-savvy friend to check her GoFundMe page. He found traces. The money was transferred to her personal account, not to medical expenses. I flipped through her social media, where she posted photos from salons, with a new manicure, with a glass of wine in Miami. Every post was like proof. I remembered how she cried in church, telling me how hard it is to be alone. It was her best number, and I was the fool who applauded. But now I saw her without the mask. She wasn't a single mother fighting for her sons. She was an actress who used us to live the life she dreamed of. I was thinking about Dad. He ran away when I was 10, and I hated him for it. But now I was beginning to understand. He couldn't stand her lies, her control, her scenes. I found his profile on social media. He lived somewhere far away, with a new family, and looked happy. I texted him. Did you know what she was like? He replied a day later. I'm sorry, Jacob. I couldn't stay. His words were like a sting, but I didn't blame him. He ran away to save himself. Now I had to save Carter and myself. Not from her, but from her lies, which strangled us like a noose. Friends, how do you like Jacob's decision to dig deeper? Is this justice or obsession? Write in the comments, would you look for evidence in such a situation? Support our podcast to find out what's next. I was lying on my bed, staring at the ceiling, and thinking that family wasn't what I thought it was. These are not photos with fake smiles, not mom's victims. These are the people who should be your support, not your cage. Mom turned Carter and me into props for her show, and I didn't want to play anymore. I didn't know how to stop her, but I knew one thing. I would find a way. Not for the sake of scandal, but for the sake of truth. Because the truth is not her scene. This is my fire, and I was going to light it so that she couldn't put it out. Friends, how do you like Jacob's transformation? Is this the beginning of a struggle, or the road to a breakup? Write in the comments, what would you do in his place? Subscribe so you don't miss the finale. Mom's fake charges for my illness and Carter's depression were not just lies. They were her personal theater, where my brother and I played the roles of victims, and she was a heroic mother. But I'm tired of being a prop. She raised $20,000, bought a car, went to Miami with her boyfriend while I was living on pennies, and Carter hid his drawings from her screams. I could have kept quiet as always for the sake of the family, but her new tax on Carter was the last straw. I opened my laptop, recorded a video, no tears, no screams, just the facts. He showed me screenshots of her GoFundMe, posts, and correspondence. He said that I was alive and well and had never had cancer. I asked people to check before donating. The video exploded on TikTok, hit the media in Ohio, and the world saw who she was. GoFundMe froze her accounts, an investigation began, and the family split. Mom lost her job, her reputation, her boyfriend, and accused me of betrayal. But I didn't feel guilty, just relieved. For the first time, I wasn't silent. I showed the truth, and it turned out to be more viral than her lies. I recorded the video at night in my cramped room, which smelled of coffee and old books. The light from the lamp was in my eyes, but I spoke calmly, as if I were reading a verdict. My name is Jacob. My mom says I'm dying of cancer. That's a lie. I showed her everything. Her posts with my old photos, fake references, screenshots of her page where she showed off her new manicure while she was packing for my chemotherapy. I told her about Carter, how she used his depression to lure even more. Check who you're donating to. I finished, looking at the camera. I uploaded the video to TikTok with the hashtags #GoFundMeScam and #TruthMatters. By morning, the video had gained 1,000 views, by evening tens of thousands. Comments rained down like hail. This is terrible. How could she? Jacob, you are a hero. I looked at the numbers and felt something inside me unclench, as if I had thrown off the chains. 3 days later, a local TV station in Ohio contacted me. They wanted an interview. I refused. I didn't want to be a star. I wanted the truth to speak for itself. GoFundMe froze her fees, and the people who sent the money started writing her angry messages. Some threatened the courts. I was scrolling through her Facebook page, where she was still trying to justify herself. This is a misunderstanding, I'll explain everything. But no one believed it. Her comments were like screams in the void. I remembered how she cried in church while playing single mother. Now her stage had collapsed, and she was naked in front of everyone. Not a hero, but a fraud. Friends, how do you like Jacob's video? Is it boldness or too public? Write in the comments, would you post this on TikTok? Subscribe to discuss the finale. The family split like glass under a hammer. Aunt Magda, who always praised Mom's sacrifices, wrote to me, "You've disgraced us all." I replied, "She shamed me when she lied about cancer." She didn't answer, and I knew she was just afraid of the truth. Uncle Roy, who was usually silent, called, "You acted harshly but correctly." His words were like a breath of air. Carter called every day, his voice trembling. "Mom is sick, but I'm with you." I said, "We'll get out, brother." He sent me a new drawing, a dragon devouring darkness. I hung it over my desk as a reminder of who I was doing this for. The relatives who used to sing Mom's praises turned away. Her boyfriend, the same friend from Miami, disappeared as soon as the police got a whiff. I grinned, imagining him packing his bags while she screamed in an empty room. Mom called a week later. Her voice was like a blade. "You betrayed your own blood. I did everything for you." I listened, and each of her screams was like an echo of my childhood. Her sacrifice, her for the sake of the family. "You stole 20 grand using me and Carter," I said. "It's not for the sake of the family. It's for you." She hung up, but I knew she wasn't crying from pain, but from rage. She lost her job at the salon. The clients refused after learning the truth. Her social media page is empty, and her followers have fled. She was an actress without a stage, and I felt no pity. She chose this role herself. Friends, what do you think about the family split? Is Jacob right, or has he gone too far? Write in the comments, would you support your relatives or the truth? Share our story with your friends. I was thinking about Dad. He ran away when I was 10, and I hated him for his weakness. But now I saw that he just couldn't play in her theater. I texted him again. "Did you know she was capable of this?" He replied, "I knew she was destroying those around her. I'm sorry I didn't pick you up." His words were like a sting, but I realized, he's not a hero, but he's not a villain either. He was a man who chose himself. Now I was doing the same thing, not for the sake of selfishness, but for the sake of freedom. I was no longer the Jacob who mowed the lawns, so he wouldn't have to hear her screams. I was a man who talked, even if it stung. Carter came to me a month later. He looked older, but his eyes were bright. "I want to live with you," he said. I nodded, hugging him. We stayed up late, talking about his drawings, about a future without her lies. I helped him apply for a scholarship to art school. His dragons deserved wings. Mom tried to write to him, asking him to come back, but he answered briefly, "I'm with Jacob." I knew she blamed me, but I didn't care. She didn't lose us because of my video. She lost us when she chose lies instead of love. Friends, how do you like Carter's decision to leave? Is it escape or force? Write in the comments. Would you support your brother in such a choice? Support our podcast to discuss. Now I'm sitting at my laptop, drinking coffee and writing a post for those who, like me, grew up in the shadow of someone's lies. I didn't become a hero like in the movies. I didn't get a standing ovation, but I got something better myself. Mom wanted me to be her victim, her sick son, her excuse. But I showed that the truth is stronger than her scenes. People still write to me. You inspired me to talk. I don't answer, but I smile. My truth has gone viral more than her lies. And it's not just a victory. This is the life I chose, without its decorations, without its control. Carter is nearby, drawing a new dragon, and I know that we are free. Not from her, but from her theater. And it's worth everything. Friends, how do you like Jacob's ending? Has he found freedom or lost his family? Write in the comments. How would you end such a story? Thank you for being with us, and see you to new stories.